Good morning, I'm Tanya Eiserer. I'm an investigative reporter here at Channel 8. We are back for day 6 of Ken Paxton's impeachment trial. We're probably going to find out this week what these state senators are going to decide at the end of the day. Lieutenant Governor Patrick said that there were about 9 hours left for the prosecution and about 12 hours left for the defense. So given all that, I would expect that we're going to see testimony wrap up probably tomorrow. And I mean, if I was a betting person, which I'm usually wrong, I would think that Thursday morning we'll see closing arguments. I mean, that'd be my guess. So today we have Todd Shapiro. He's going to be our legal analyst, helping us walk through the events of the day. And we have Berna Steptoe, our political producer who knows all things political, coming back to help us understand what we're seeing and hearing from a political perspective. Todd, you've been following this trial. What are your takeaways?
Well, a lot of really interesting and eye-opening testimony, throughout the last, what are we now on, day 5? This is beginning of day 6.
Day 6.
Yesterday brought quite a few interesting witnesses. The one that stuck out most for me had to have been the Attorney General's former chief of staff that testified a lot about this alleged extramarital affair. This was the first time during the course of this impeachment trial that we heard the name and more specific allegations that related to the affair, how it was handled within the office, some of the pressures that were put on people within the Attorney General's staff. I think that was pretty eye-opening, and of course how the Attorney General's wife, State Senator Angela Paxton, had to deal with that sitting in the Senate chamber listening to all that. So that was a pretty eye-opening bit of testimony yesterday. Of course, today, I'm interested to hear who the prosecution brings going forward. Are there going to be more staff members? Are there going to be more members from the Attorney General's office to talk more about some of these wrongdoings? I guess we're just going to have to sit back and wait and see.
I'm betting on Don Clemmer. And the reason I'm betting on Don Clemmer is just based on trial progression. You had Greg Cox, you had Margaret Moore, and so Don Clemmer is the one that is dealing directly, mostly from the Travis County District Attorney's Office with the AG's office on these referrals. And so at the end of the day, we had kind of this, who asked for what, and I mean, personally, I think that's really getting down into the weeds, but I'm betting on Don Clemmer. So anyway, Bernadine?
Well, I'd like to hear from him only to sort of clear up this second referral and just how important that second referral is. And I'm with Todd. Yesterday it was striking. Missy was just striking in terms of, I think she summed what a lot of Ken Paxton's supporters felt once they found out that not only was he involved in this extramarital affair, but also that he had all of these allegations against him other than what the feds had already had done. But when Missy said, it just broke my heart. Mm-hmm. That just touched anyone listening. I'm sure that it touched their hearts as well. So I think that her testimony was the most illuminating testimony for me than most of them yesterday.
From a female perspective?
Well, probably.
Because Missy Carey has no dog in the hunt. She's not a whistleblower, and you just it bears repeating, all of these people are chosen by Ken Paxton. These are true believers. Mm-hmm. He had surrounded himself with people who were ideologically compatible. So I'm just imagining Missy Carey as having to deal with complaints from the scheduler and the security detail about this affair. I mean, the unfairness of
and I agree with that. And from a criminal defense standpoint, you're right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I do on a daily basis, and we're trying to defend people that are accused of crimes, and I'm in trial or we're trying to prepare for trial. I'm always looking for what's the motivation of the quote unquote victim to make up a story or come at somebody with false allegations. these are all people, you're right, that were so close to the Attorney General. They were his hand-picked team. They were this closest inner circle. They were extremely conservative, ideologically aligned with him. What is their motivation for trying to not only ruin their own professional career, but trying to ruin the Attorney General's career as well? I don't believe the defense has established any credible motive on the part of all these people to come forward so far.
Are you sure they're not all
trial.
in a conspiracy, Todd?
I mean, what would the conspiracy be? What's the end game?
I mean, maybe they were joined up with the FBI, 2 federal judges, a clerk.
What's the end game though? They're all there to say what? What are we going to get if we're successful here?
Right.
Nobody's going to get a promotion. Nobody is going to get a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's no money for anybody. So what? And you're right. The whistleblower. We're not even talking about just the whistleblowers. We're talking about his inner circle of most trusted advisors.
Right.
What are they going to gain? What was their motivation for?
I mean, David
forward?
Maxwell ends his law enforcement, his storied law enforcement career on this. Tell me what he gains. He gains absolutely nothing. And you have to believe, I keep saying Occam's razor, I just keep coming back to it. It doesn't make any sense.
And then especially, you have to wonder about the risk that Ken Paxton took when he fired Maxwell.
Yep.
This was a storied ranger. I mean, everyone, even the defense, had to come out and say, you're respected. And Paxton fired him, demoted him.
Oh yeah.
So it's just, I think that so far, in my viewpoint, the defense, they just have not discredited them in terms of their motive and why are you here? And this is something else that the senators, they have to weigh.
Oh yeah. Todd.
Yes, ma'am.
We talked about this before we went live. Your mom is Florence Shapiro.
She is.
And tell us a little bit about your mom. I know.
I remember her from back in the day.
And I didn't do this on purpose because I didn't realize the connection. I feel like sometimes God just kind of works in strange ways, and he just drops people into my lap on the right days. Tell folks out there about your mom and her connection to the Paxtons.
Sure. So my mom, who I'm obviously very proud of, have been my whole life. She's been quite a role model for me and my career, just in how she's been such a leader in the community and in our state and a trailblazer. She was the mayor of Plano for a number of years when I was growing up, and then became our state senator in Plano, elected in 1992, and served in that role in the Texas State Senate for 20 years. And she preceded Ken Paxton in that position, and then Ken preceded his wife, Angela. So the succession of the Senate seat went from my mom to Attorney General Paxton to now Angela Paxton. So we have quite a bit of history there.
How'd your mom feel about the Paxtons? If you want to say that one.
I think that she's watching this trial very closely, and I know she's watching me very closely this morning, so I'm going to leave it at that.
You're like, I did not want to get a call from Mom.
I remember your mom, and that is definitely dating me too if you're going before, but she was very well respected.
Yes, thank you.
Very, very well respected.
Thank you, we're very
and she
proud
did
of
an
her.
extremely good job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, and your mom comes from a different era of the Republican Party.
I do believe that's true as well. Yeah, I think the party's changed quite a bit since her days when George Bush was governor of Texas, and you had Bob Bullock, and you had even Ann Richards. I mean, there was a lot of much more bridge building and both sides coming together and doing what's right for the state. And now it seems to be so much more partisan and ugly, and it's a different time, that's for sure.
I kind of come from the school of, can't we get things done, but.
And not even can we get along, just that can we do what's best for the state.
That's right.
We'll do what's best for Texas. Let's change topics because I don't want to have Todd's mom calling and saying,
"Get off of me."
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't resist. We might talk about that again, because people are jumping in and out of this live stream. So, and we're in the process right now of building audience, and so right now, people are getting on, and we expect this is going to start at 9. How important, Todd, is it that they show actual bribery? I mean, do they have to prove he took an actual bribe?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that the closer you pay attention and read into the actual rules here, and I've had this discussion with a lot of different people about what is the standard of proof here? What are they having? Is it proof beyond a reasonable doubt? And is it follows the semblance of a criminal trial, but it's not really a criminal trial. I mean, there are portions of this that are aligned very closely with the rules and the rules of evidence and the procedure of a criminal trial, but it's a quasi criminal situation. So is the standard of proof when the jury, the senators start to deliberate, when they go back and start deciding, do we have enough evidence to prove his guilt for impeachment purposes, do they have to prove that he actually committed the crime of bribery or whatever it is? The articles of impeachment, what are there, 19 different?
Well, there's 16. There was a total of 20. They're actually trying him on 16.
16, right. And so do they have to find beyond a reasonable doubt on each individual article?
They can only find him guilty on one of them.
One is enough, right? That's correct.
And there is one that deals with, and I forget which number it is, that deals with unfitness for office.
That seems quite vague.
It is, well, I forget which, I'll have to go back and pull up the articles of impeachment to look, but I mean, it has to do with, it is quite vague, but it's kind of a catch-all one. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think that Ken Paxton's legal team is trying to say that his actions were not outside the norm.
Right.
They're saying his actions were outside the norm, but they were justified because of XYZ, because there was this massive conspiracy on the part of a bankruptcy judge, a magistrate, a clerk, FBI agents, the U.S. Attorney's Office. Am I forgetting anybody? All these people are out to get Nate Paul. They're all out to get him. I mean, that's how they're justifying it.
Well, it brings up the question, why is Nate Paul so important?
I don't know.
So you still go back to, why are you trying to protect and help Nate Paul? And also, the bottom line is going to be all of this evidence, all of this information, and I think the unfitness for office will weigh into it, because if you look at the evidence, that brings that point. But at the end of the day, it's going to be all of this evidence. Is it enough to remove the Attorney General? Is it enough to remove this Republican Attorney General? And that's the question that they're going to have to answer. And you know what, the grassroots, Paxton's supporters, they're trying awfully hard to put the pressure on these senators that you don't remove, what are they saying, that our duly elected officer. So that's where it's going to come down to. And those who want to impeach, well, he's already been impeached, but those who want to convict, they're going to have to come up with their reasoning for not removing him, as well as those who do want to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and they haven't gotten into the renovations.
Right.
The how were the are they going to try to prove that? And they are fast running out of time. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when they were agreeing to these timelines. I don't understand how you thought you could present this case in 24 hours.
Well, you know what?
I mean, they might not have much of a choice.
Right. It might not have been their call.
But yes, I may have just been told this is what you get. But
those might have been the rules.
I knew the moment I heard the timelines, I was just like, there's 16 articles, and this is a pretty complicated situation. How do you actually do this?
Yeah. The rules, as I understand it, were primarily created by this committee, and they brought it to the body who voted on it. So the question is, a great number of these senators now are attorneys. So how did they come up with this timeline? And then who would have thought that the defense would spend so much time redirecting?
Well, I suspect that I don't know if the defense will end up calling any witnesses. They're not going to have a lot of time.
Seem like
not. I mean, but who are they going to call in his defense? That's the question. Do you have any witnesses that will come forward to be able to show? Not that the only thing they've been ever screaming about is the procedure to get here has been unethical, illegal, unconstitutional. Okay, where is a witness that says my client did not commit these crimes or did not commit these articles of impeachment, there is no witness.
That's what I've thought about.
I think
Who could they
what
bring?
they've done is they focused on poking holes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And which is
Yeah.
normally a defense tactic.
That's what you'll
fine.
do. And-
But the holes they're poking have been more about the process has not been fair. That's been their big thing up into this point is, it was a rush to get here and it was a, unfair process, but they have never been able to bring it, in my opinion, at least that I've heard, they never brought any information or any evidence or any witness that says, he never took a bribe, or here's a witness that says that, they were talking about the home renovation, but they've talked a lot. The defense
at 9:15 today rather than 9 o'clock.
They said they're starting at 9:15 instead of 9 o'clock.
Oh.
That's what I just heard.
Oh, okay. Well, we got plenty of time
That's
to
right.
chat.
That in the opening statements, I believe that the defense said that we're going to show you that those home renovations were all paid for, by the Paxtons. That we've got, whatever receipts or witnesses or somebody that's going to show that those were not paid for, with illegal funds or whatever it was, or it wasn't a bribe, or it wasn't paid for by Nate Paul or whoever. So I guess they're going to have to present something on that level to show that the home renovations were legitimate. So I guess we'll wait and see on that.
Well, we'll see.
I don't know.
But
Yeah.
I've thought the same thing, Tanya. Who do they bring? To me, what they're doing is trying to show that these whistleblowers, all those who are against Paxton, are actually the criminals and not Paxton.
Right. Well, folks that out there on the live stream think we're against Paxton, and I don't have any dog in the hunt one way or the other. But I don't think it's out of line based on. I mean, I've been doing this. I've been a reporter covering criminal justice for 30 years, to observe that the actions that have been described, and they're not disputing them largely, are out of the norm. So I don't think offering it's. I've kind of come from this school that facts are facts, and in large part, the facts are not in dispute. There's some things around the edges about the referrals and kind of who did what, but no one's disputing that the thing with open records happened, or the thing with the foreclosure order happened, or that all, in large measure, the broad strokes of this are not in dispute. It's kind of around these edges. But you know what we don't know? How does Ken Paxton meet Nate Paul? I want to know the answer to that. We don't know.
Well, we don't know, and I really don't think that the prosecutors know now. Perhaps the defense.
I'd like for them to tell us, because I'd sure love to know the answer to that.
They're telling us less. The less they tell us, the less they talk about Nate Paul, the better for them,
Right.
because he's at the center of it. But
Well, and Nate Paul is currently under federal indictment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what's going to come next? That's the real question for me, as well as, win, lose, or draw for Ken Paxton when this is over, and it will be over in the next few days.
This part of his trouble is
Yeah.
over.
What
Yeah.
comes next with the feds? Because the arrest of Nate Paul was no accident at the time that it happened. This has been under investigation for a very long time, and they, indicted him and arrested him just a few months ago. So now what happens with Ken Paxton with regard to the feds? They are so tightly aligned and closely aligned together. How do you have one without the other? And the thought process certainly is that they're trying to use Nate Paul as a pawn or as a piece to get to Paxton. Paxton's a much bigger prize for the feds. I mean, to try to indict him or take him down as the sitting Attorney General of the state of Texas is a much bigger deal than taking down a real estate investor for his wrongdoing. So what comes after the impeachment trial? Are the feds waiting to see what happens here and then they make their move regardless? I guess that's certainly a possibility.
ooh, that's a good point.
Well, and also you've got the securities fraud trial. So that, Paxton was indicted back in 2015 on those securities fraud cases by a Collin County grand jury. Now, because of the way it's wound its way through the courts, it's going to actually be tried in Harris County, which is not going to be a favorable place for Ken Paxton to be tried. I mean, Collin County would have been much more favorable ground for him. But that's coming probably early next year. And those are serious charges.
You know, that could weigh on some of these senators. You know, if we keep him, what are we looking at on down the road? Because you don't know what Nate, and I call him Nate now, but you don't know what Nate Paul has to tell prosecutors and tell the FBI. You just don't know.
I think we're going to hear from Laura Olson.
No.
I don't think so either.
I don't
But
think
somebody
so.
asked that. Somebody asked that in the
Yeah,
chat, and I'm
yeah.
like, I don't think so.
I would hope so.
Oh well.
Well,
I mean, I'm,
Well, I mean, you say no. I mean, don't you think that the prosecution has subpoenaed her to testify? She's a vital part of this, I would think.
so do you put her on? Does she
Of course
take the
they put
fifth?
her on. Why would she take the fifth? She's not accused of any crimes.
well, but
true.
why?
I mean, why does she get to exert a Fifth Amendment privilege when she's not been accused of any wrongdoing? So, to me, her testimony should be compelled if they're going to follow the law.
So you put her on the stand.
Absolutely.
You put her up
Well,
there.
100%.
Yes, but keep in mind this is a political trial, and the prosecutors are taking a risk if they put that mistress on the stand and have Angela Paxton having to stare at her for hours.
Then you run the risk of making senators.
Well, I mean, so aren't we asking questions about, what kind of jobs she was given by Nate Paul? What
That's
kind
true.
of? I mean, there's a lot of information that only she can answer.
Well, not necessarily because.
Well, you're not putting Nate Paul up. He's not going to
Not
testify.
gonna,
No, he
I'd be
definitely would exert his
very
bid.
surprised, and as I say, I don't know enough. We can't look at on down the road, but I would be very surprised.
But but folks are asking about the affair and kind of why we're talking about it. It's not really the affair that is at issue. I personally don't care what people do in their personal lives. That's between them, their spouse, and their God. But where it becomes an issue is when you have a security detail and you have schedulers and you are involving public resources in your personal business.
And that's why I think
That's
it's
where it
extremely
becomes an
relevant to call her to the stand, especially if they have dates, times, places, locations, expense accounts. I mean, different things that they can specifically. God, this thing keeps popping out of my ear.
Oh, you can take it out.
That's all right. That they can ask her about, that only she may have information about, that she can testify directly about. She's a direct material witness to that stuff. If I am the prosecution, I absolutely call her to the stand.
I get that, and then I don't dismiss the fact that the affair is part of this trial in the sense that the prosecutors are claiming that Nate Paul, the part of that bribery, was giving her a job and all of that. But I just think that is very, very risky to put her on that stand, and because it could the senators could become more, a fellow senator.
Hold on one second. Jay, what? Oh, do I want to play? No, I want to keep talking. I feel like talking. Sorry, Jay's over there. At some point, guys, I'll have to make Jay come over here and introduce himself. Jay is our concierge over there making everything works properly, as well as Ryan. And if you were watching my last trial, then you know who Ryan is. But we have Ryan and Jay, and they are the people behind the scenes making everything work. Anyway, so I've put in the chat asking people for questions, and I want to ask a couple of this from you guys. What do y'all think about Ken Paxton not being there since day one?
You want me to start with that, or do you want to start with
Now,
that?
you know
Because I got a
what?
strong opinion about it.
And I don't know if our opinions are the same, but I talked about this on Inside Texas Politics. Go ahead, and then I'll follow, because I
I have a
strong.
feeling we're going to have plenty of time today.
Okay.
I have strong opinions, a very strong opinion.
Okay, go ahead, Todd.
I think it's absolutely awful that he's not there. I think in the position that he holds, the office that he holds as the state's top law enforcement official, that he's been accused of these acts of malfeasance, these articles of impeachment, and this is the trial in front of this body, this respected body, and this historic chamber, this historic event, and it's your actions that are in question, and we're here to talk about things you've done allegedly. you need to be there and stand up for what you believe is right versus wrong. All that being said, if I'm one of the senators that is choosing to decide whether or not he committed these offenses or not, and I've got to be there every day from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. listening to witness after witness and taking notes and paying attention, time away from my business, my family, my affairs.
Yeah, it's not like they make a lot of money.
Because of his actions,
Right.
because of things that he's allegedly done, whether they believe he did or not, but we're here because of things he's supposedly done.
Right.
And he doesn't have the decency to be there. If I'm here, he's above all this, but I got to be here. That alone would make me want to potentially say, you're out, bud.
Very well said. Because you know what? The respect. His actions imply that he doesn't even respect the process, which he claims is a witch hunt. But it doesn't even matter because the senators are there. And where is it that your defendant doesn't have to show up? And the optic of it is terrible in terms of his respect for the process, his respect for the senators. And then here's something else too, and I think that you probably alluded to it because I am a woman, but his wife has to sit there
That's
and
right.
face it.
Yeah. Yeah.
His wife has to
100%.
sit there and face
Yeah.
these accusations.
And
sit
listen
there-
about an affair.
Yes. And they're looking at her, so why not look at you?
Yeah.
I
and
think he's getting some bad advice. I mean, obviously, it's a calculated move on his part that somebody politically, an advisor or a group of advisors has said, if the rules say you don't have to be there, don't show up. It'll work better for you politically. Something about sitting at that defense table, the image of you sitting on trial is something you'll never, ever get rid of. So somebody is giving that. I think it backfired. I think it looks awful that he's not there, and I think it infuriates people. At least it doesn't sit well with me. I don't know how it sits with the rest of the state, but you're right. I didn't think of the wife angle. He's
Yes.
putting her through that, and she doesn't even get to vote, and she's sitting there listening to it, especially with the stuff about the affair, and he's not even there. He's the one that put her through all this.
And he doesn't show
Well,
up.
it speaks to, well, let me say, what he actually thinks or doesn't think, I can't go there. But it sends a signal about what he thinks about this process.
That's correct. Which he's
Well,
always, acted as if it was a witch hunt anyways, and it wasn't.
So that's, to me, that's part of.
Yeah, that's like
that's
his
part of the
symbolic
message
move.
he's
Right.
sending.
That's
is
right.
that
It's like, I don't
I'm
even
not-
recognize it.
I'm not going to deign to be here.
I'm not going to dignify this
Right.
whole process.
Right. That seems
Well,
to be.
and you mentioned that he could be getting some bad advice. Remember, if you listen and believe what the whistleblowers are saying, he doesn't pay any attention to advice.
That's right.
So, and he's been in politics how long? He's been a state representative.
25
He's
years.
been a state senator, and
Yeah,
now
20
he's
years.
the AG.
Yeah, that's right.
How many years?
That's right, 20, 25 years.
And
right.
you can't look at the political ramifications.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm continuing, folks. I'm trying to watch the chat and write your questions down, and so we can kind of go through them now that we have a few more minutes here. How do you, Todd? You're the lawyer, and I kind of
Play one on TV.
Have my I have my fake law degree. I never made it to law school. I thought about it, but never did it. Would you rate Dan Patrick in his fresh new judicial career?
I will say that and I've read some stuff on this too, because I'm not going to lie and say I've watched, gavel to gavel coverage, but I've read people that have, and some opinions are that he's done a pretty good job. He's grown into the role a little bit. Having Judge Lana Myers there with him has been great. She's wonderful. I know her from back in my days as a prosecutor in Dallas. She's extremely well respected. She's very smart. She's got a great judicial temperament. That was a wonderful selection to have at his side. So from all accounts, he's kept the trial moving. He's kept everybody working. He's probably made the right rulings so far, from what I understand. I don't think there's anything that he's done that has been outside the bounds, so I think he's done a pretty good job.
And he seems to have kind of gotten the hang of hearsay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And also keep in mind that at the beginning of the trial, he said, "I am neither a judge nor an attorney.
Right.
So you go into it knowing that he's learning as he goes,
Right.
and I think that he's doing a good job as well.
Yeah, and he had a I would say a rough first day, and maybe second half day. But then he seems to overall, and I've seen a lot of judges, he seems to have overall kind of gotten his sea legs
Right.
under him, and he is definitely consulting with Judge Myers. And Judge Myers was a Dallas County District Judge, and she also served on the 5th Court of Appeals based out of Dallas. So she's, very well respected in the legal
Extremely.
community. One of the few people we have involved in this that comes out of Dallas.
That's
Everybody
right.
else
Everybody else is
seems to
Houston.
be, it's like everybody else is Harris County. I'm
Yep.
like, where's the Dallas people?
That's right.
And it also speaks to the fact that Patrick does want to do right, does want to come across as if he's fairly ruling.
Yeah, I really can't. I was a little critical of him in the beginning, but I would say overall, I think he's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, he's done. I think he's done the best he can. I think he's trying to be, fair, and there's been a couple times where I thought, I'm surprised you let that in, but I think we've had a couple of cases where he just wanted to hear it.
Well, yes, and also
there was one yesterday where I forget which one it was, but there was one where it's kind of clear, like he just wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
I think it might have been the stuff related to the affair.
Well, I think at one time he said, "I want to hear this."
Yeah.
And then keep in mind too that elected judges don't always make rulings that we agree with.
I have seen, honestly, and I've seen some terrible judges.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Of
Yeah.
course.
I mean, frankly, actually, there's some Dallas County judges that I think Dan Patrick could do a better
Probably
job
so.
than some of our Dallas
Yeah,
County
probably
judges.
right.
So I mean, there's, I would never, because we've had some people that have gotten on the bench that don't have a lot of experience.
That's correct.
And some of what you see in some of the, I'm very familiar with Dallas County courts, so I'm not going to say any names, but there's some judges. Woo, Lord, help us. So somebody was asking about Angela having to be there. I mean, Senator Paxton has to be there,
She has to be there.
and we talked about why she has to be there.
Well, the Constitution, the Texas.
Oh, that thing.
Yes,
The
that
Texas-
thing
that-
that we're finally getting to. The Texas. The Texas Constitution dictates that all senators must be present.
Right.
So, and then, and you have to question. I know the rules establish the fact that she could not vote, but I think I don't think that she could in terms of that.
I don't know.
The
I'm not an
Constitution dictates that she has to be there.
Yeah, but that's why she's there, folks, is because she's a state senator, and that's what the Constitution requires. In fact, you've noticed we had at one point, maybe it was day 3, where I lose track of my days here, but they had to brief. Maybe it was Friday, where they had to take a break in the session for about 45 minutes while one of the state senators went and took care of a personal matter, and they cannot hold court without all the senators
Sure.
being there.
It's
So
just
that-
like a jury, right? I mean, if you got 12 jurors during a murder trial, you don't want to put on testimony if all 12 jurors aren't present. I mean,
Right.
you can't leave out one of the jurors and say, here's what you missed in the 45 minutes you were gone. I mean, if
Right.
people have lives, I mean, you can't put everything aside for 10 days. Things happen, right? So if you got to take a break, take a break for an hour, or somebody's got to be late for whatever. Maybe, I mean, it's 9:15 and they haven't started yet. Somebody could have had, something they absolutely had to deal with this morning, and that's why there may be a delay this morning. So that's not unheard of for sure.
And then also, well, if you're looking at a regular jury, they wouldn't. A number of them wouldn't even be wouldn't be a jury because of conflict of interest. So,
Well, yeah, you got
and that's why
Brian Hughes was involved in the foreclosure.
and that's
opinion.
why they the rules prohibit her from voting
Oh yeah.
because of that conflict of interest.
I mean, it's inherently a political trial, and you can't really
Yeah.
get around it. I mean, that's just the way that this cookie crumbles. So Bud Kennedy emailed. He's our Star Telegram. I don't know. Who knows more about politics, you or Bud? Is that a
Depending
race?
on the area.
Oh, depending on the area. Okay.
Depending upon
That was a
the
careful.
county.
That was a careful answer. But Bud sent over something that was put out by Empower Texans. They're a pro-Paxton. I mean,
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, very pro-Paxton.
Yes.
And so what they're saying is that they've kind of done their napkin vote count, and they're saying that they see the conservative champions who voted to dismiss all charges were Hall, Creighton, Colcourse, Betancourt, Parker, and Campbell. They see the swing vote Republican senators as Drew Springer, Pete Flores, Phil King, Kevin Sparks, Charles Swertner, and Charles Perry. And they see the GOP senators rumored to be pushing impeachment: Joan Huffman, Brian Hughes, Kelly Hancock, Mays Middleton, Brian Birdwell, and Robert Nichols. So they're seeing 6 as being essentially 4. I mean, of course, we have no idea if any of this is accurate. And then they're seeing essentially 6 swing votes. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Bernadine? You're
Well, I saw that list, and
you buy into that list?
well, the first 6, if you look at their votes,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
they were consistent. I don't know about the swing. I question the list that they name as swing voters.
You really think they're swing voters?
No, I think, well, in terms of the definition of swing, you know, they'll go either way. But I think that most of them are going to sit there and weigh the evidence, weigh the motives.
That's at least what we hope.
You know, I said I think. She asked me my opinion. And then I don't want to, I just think that, you know what, earlier I mentioned that if you looked at, if someone wanted to make an opinion on their own, you stay away from the conservative talking points narrative as well as the liberal, because they have motive, they have an agenda. They seem to have an agenda. So we'll see how these votes come down, but I'm not buying into that list. But if you look at the initial votes on the motions, I can see how they came up with that list. But that was way before the evidence came out.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, and who knows where the 6 that voted to dismiss all the charges still stand? You don't know.
Very good
you
point.
really don't know.
Very good point. Now, some, and I'm not going to call names, they've been with Paxton from the beginning
Yeah.
of those 6. So I cannot see them abandoning him. And I use that word. I really use that word because that's probably how his supporters would look at it.
So, Todd, you know Mark Melton, right? Mark Melton, he's a local attorney.
Yes,
He
Mark,
wrote-
yes, yep.
He wrote an op-ed.
I read that this morning, yep.
I'm going to read a couple paragraphs. That he says that any lawyer watching the Paxton trial understands as lawyers. Let me go a little further back. He says the thing when directing a witness at trial is to tell a story. I was just a student. Blah blah blah. He goes on. He basically says frequent objections can interrupt a story so much that it's impossible to keep the facts straight. There's a reason lawyers do it. It works. But any lawyer watching the Paxton trial understands his lawyers have abused this strategy throughout the trial, objecting to anything they think is conceivably objectionable and even things they probably don't. Some of their objections made sense, many defy logic. And he goes on to talk about how it's smart lawyering when you don't want the other side to be able to present a coherent account of facts that show your client did a bad thing. I would have to agree that there's been, some of their objections are just, especially.
It's a balancing act. There's no question about it. It's good trial law, right? So you have to have a good feel for your audience, your jury. You have to have a good feel for what your strategy is. You have to have a good feel for when I'm trying to throw somebody off their game, when I'm trying to announce my presence in a certain way, when I have legitimate legal objections, other times when I need to just keep my mouth shut. So it's a very much a stylistic approach. Busby is bombastic, he's
God.
loud, he's in your face. That may work sometimes for him in some settings, and it may not work here. Who knows? I guess time will tell. So until the it's a very much a results oriented business, right? So
Well, yeah.
if it worked for his client and it ends up getting him acquitted, then whatever it is he's doing worked, and if it doesn't, then he had the wrong strategy.
And we must be reminded too that most of these witnesses are lawyers, so they understand the
what he's trying to
process
do,
and they
right.
understand what he's doing, and they're probably well prepared.
That's
for that.
correct. Yeah.
Well, most of them are lawyers, but most of them
They're-
are very clearly
Yeah,
not
not
trial
trial lawyers, that's
attorneys.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, because it's, you know, when you watched Ryan Vassar on the stand and you watched Mateer, it was very clear. These
Right.
guys, these are paper pushers.
That's
These are
right.
not guys like Todd Shapiro and
Right.
others that are going into courtrooms. I mean, the attorneys that I've had on this show, these are all practicing attorneys,
That's right.
people that go into courtrooms and argue day in and day out, which is why I've done this approach with other trials, but one of the reasons why we went with having a political person on too is because just the nature of this thing is so different
Right.
than a typical
And
situation.
then you have a judge in training.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, but I still think overall he's done an okay job.
Oh no. Keep in mind, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just bringing the point that they're trying their style, and we have to wonder if it works. But you also have a judge in training.
Do you think so? They've entered. Before I go off that thought, is there anything Patrick could have really done to deal with the defense for some of these objections that were really over the top? It was clear, especially with Anthony Oso, that
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, that the attorney has a right to object when they feel like there's a objectionable question or answer, and all the judge can do is either sustain or overrule it. So there's no way to, you know, make a ruling that the defense is not allowed to make an objection.
Make an objection.
That's
yeah.
not a proper ruling. So no, I don't think there's anything you can do.
oh, okay. Jay was alerting me to what's on the screen. There's Angela Paxton talking to. Do you know who that is? I don't know who that is. I'm not. Do you know who that is, Bernadine?
don't.
I don't know who that is. But she's back and looking
You know what?
animated.
Well, it's interesting too because she has primarily stayed away from the camera.
Right. Well, I don't think she really has much. I mean, the way those cameras are moving around, is that the live Senate feed? That's the live Senate feed.
Yeah.
That's being operated by. Oh, I'm sorry. It's KView's feed. Okay. Yeah, you've got the main trial feed, which is the coming out of that's being operated by the state Senate. You know, whoever operates their cameras, and then you have a couple of other other cameras there, and then KView, our sister station's got that camera up that's showing this live view. And I don't know. I'm looking. I've got the Senate feed up, and I'm not seeing Dan Patrick yet, so I'm not sure. You know, he's been very prompt every morning, so I'm a little
He's dealing with something, isn't he?
something's going on because we haven't started yet, and I'm a little bit surprised by that. Todd, if you were the Senate, and you were called upon to make these decisions, they have entered these, and they haven't played them in court, and I think it's really just a time issue, because in trial I think you would. Would you want to hear the recordings of these interviews that were done with Nate Paul?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it certainly, yes, if it was a real trial, you would certainly think
Well, you
that
play excerpts,
excerpts, and then the entire interview would certainly probably be entered into evidence.
which they did.
Right. It'd be entered for the jury to consider if they wanted it during deliberations. They could listen to
Yeah.
some, all, or none of whatever they wanted to. And then, yeah, as the prosecution, you would pick out the highlights to play and say, you know, focus on this part, this part, and this part. But however much that you would want to play is what you would play. So I'm certainly probably for timing purposes here
Yeah,
in the
that's
Senate chamber, they haven't done so.
No, I'm sure that's why they
Yeah.
haven't done it. But it's fascinating to me that those recordings, and I think folks are asking me to post a link in the chat. I'll do it here in a second, guys, because you can find it on the state Senate website. Within these, they have some PDFs that embedded within these PDFs are those exhibits that have those recordings, and frankly, Nate Paul, I'm trying to pull it up, guys, because put this in the chat for y'all so you'll have the link, but he makes no sense. I mean, his description of why he thinks that the feds have altered this search warrant literally makes no sense. I mean, I have watched many interviews with with law enforcement, and I can't make heads or tails. He has no good explanation for why he thinks this occurred. It makes just no sense. And there's also some audio recordings in there of so when Brandon Kammack gets hired, he ends up delivering subpoenas to a couple of banks and a bunch of other places. But the attorney for Nate Paul, Michael Wynn, goes with him. Todd, have you been a prosecutor?
I was for 3 years, and that just doesn't feel right, does it? I mean, it just doesn't pass the smell test, does it?
No.
No.
And that's that. You have to wonder too. Why would you put? And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but why would you put him part of the? You don't need him because they primarily talked about his actions. And I'm not saying whether it would help or not. I'm just saying that. Who wants to hear from him? I don't know. Who wants to hear from him?
Okay, they're asking who hired Kammack. Well, Dan Patrick hired Kammack. I mean, I'm not Dan Patrick. I'm doing what Hardin kept doing. No, Paxton hired Brandon Kammack. There has been this whole question about the referrals, who sent the second referral, how did they get instigated, but that was Ken Paxton. But one of the things they pointed out yesterday with Mark Penley, was that it as a prosecutor, when you would go deliver subpoenas back when you were first of all, did you ever go deliver a subpoena?
That's what the investigators are for.
So you would never go.
The prosecutor themselves would never.
So is that unusual?
Extremely.
And would your investigator normally go with the lawyer of a party involved in that situation to deliver said subpoenas?
Well, I mean, I guess in certain particular situations, the attorney may accompany the investigator to serve a subpoena on a particular witness. Nah, that seems like it'd be an unusual move.
Okay, so in this particular case, what you had is Nate Paul's attorney.
That's weird.
Going with.
That's a party.
Right,
not the attorney general. You know, it would be.
I mean, it wasn't like it was the bank's attorney.
That's right. I mean, you're talking about the law. I mean, when I say the attorney, assistant DA or an assistant with the attorney general's office,
but not
party. A lawyer from an individual, not a private world attorney going with a state's investigator. That's the connection that I don't understand. That seems like it's crossing lines there.
Well, it speaks to a level of cooperation between those that doesn't make much sense.
None.
And so it's, based on everything I've seen, and I've watched all of this testimony, and I don't think it was the open records situation or the foreclosure order or the stuff with the Mitty Foundation, the initial stuff with the Mitty Foundation. There is no doubt based on the testimony that it is when they get wind, when Mateer and Penley and Maxwell and all these guys get wind about these grand jury subpoenas, and they realize that they're being delivered on Nate Paul's business adversaries, right? And also his law enforcement adversaries, right? That's when they go, man, we don't know where this is going, but we've got to do something.
Yeah.
And the argument that's been made by Paxton's attorneys is, well, why didn't you go to Ken Paxton again?
Ludicrous. Now that's crazy. Why would you?
They've already been going to him. They've been going to him over and over and over. Every one of them.
Over and over. And then why would you say, okay, go to him and say, we're getting ready to turn you into law enforcement?
Yeah,
none of it makes sense. But you know what? There's a lot that doesn't make sense in this entire situation.
I am, and I don't think we'll get the answer to this, just the how they meet. How does he meet Nate Paul? How do they get connected? There's a lot of unanswered
I
questions.
think it's probably like a lot of different things. Nate Paul probably made a large donation to one of his campaigns somewhere years ago, and like any big political donor, the politician then is going to give him access and give him, hey, I like that big donation, I want more of those, so what can I do for you? I mean, that's politics, that's how that works. And I know this guy's rich, and I know he's conservative, and I know he likes me now, so I need to like him back. So how can we help each other out? So it probably started as benign as that, and then who knows where it went from there.
Yeah.
Somebody says here, how many senators in that building have had affairs? I don't think
that's
anybody.
really relevant.
I don't think anybody is.
It's not that he needs. To
Nobody's
be impeached
casting
because he's having
stones
an
here.
affair. And the affair, it's not.
It
the
has
issue.
to do with the way the office
That's
gets
correct.
used.
Yeah, and then you have to keep in mind that according to what we've heard, that the bribery and all of that came about to protect and keep the affair,
That's
not
right.
necessarily because he's not being impeached because of an affair.
No. I mean, the affair has been well known for 2 or 3 years, and it's we are here right now because of the settlement. That's how we get here.
That's how it started. Yeah.
Right.
That in itself is also extremely problematic to me. That's where it all started for me individually, in my opinion, when the Attorney General wanted the taxpayers to pay the money for the settlement. And I understand it was within his capacity as Attorney General, but why are we footing the bill for a whistleblower settlement? It doesn't make any sense to me.
$3.3 million.
Yeah.
But you know what? What we've gone through, what we've watched over these last 6 days, 5 days, is you wonder, or you come to a conclusion as to why he wanted to settle. He didn't want all this information coming out, because had it gone to trial, to a typical criminal trial, all this stuff would have come out. All this information would have come out.
Well, yeah, the whistleblower case was a civil trial. I mean, and they were able to hold off discovery in that. I mean, like depositions and that kind of thing.
Whatever kind of trial, it would have come out.
Oh, for sure.
And so his deal is, okay, let's settle, and thinking that we can move past it. But and also keep in mind that the House requested him to come before the committee to explain why are we paying $3.3 million of taxpayer money. He wouldn't go. See, that's another appearance.
Well, and he really upset. This is well known that he very much upset those Republican committee members by not coming and talking to him.
That's right.
And explaining himself.
And according to reports, Representative Jeff Leach almost begged him, this is serious, come before this committee. He refused.
So we got a couple other questions since as we tap dance here, waiting on this to start. And based on my experience, when they start, they're going to start pretty rapidly. So somebody's commenting on. They're saying, well, they went to the FBI with no evidence. Todd, talk about evidence. What is evidence? Do you have to have
and the significance
the smoking
of that.
gun? I mean, what counts as evidence?
Well, anything can count as evidence. It depends on, testimony is, people are like, how can just, testimony be enough to convict? Well, testimony is usually the biggest part of evidence, somebody getting on the witness stand and testifying as to what they saw. When I say heard, usually heard is only going to be from what the defendant said. The words of the defendant are usually the only things that someone can testify to. That's not hearsay. So if someone gets up and says, this is what General Paxton said to me, or that's what he said in this situation, that's not hearsay. If the person got up and said, this is what the contractor said to me, that is hearsay. I know that's a hard distinction to make. The idea is anything that the defendant said that can be what's called against his self-interest, that is admissible evidence. So testimony of a straight up a witness, what they saw, what they observed, what they heard, any testimony is always going to be your number one piece of evidence, then any tangible material evidence, right? So medical bills, receipts from a hotel or a bar or a restaurant, anything that can support diagrams, charts, tangible evidence that can be introduced. Recordings, you mentioned recordings that were introduced into evidence, video camera recordings, anything like surveillance camera recordings, that all can be evidence, but it has to be introduced in the right way within the rules of evidence. The proper predicate has to be laid to make sure it's authentic, that it hasn't been tampered with, that it comes from the proper source. So these are all things that have to be done in the right way within the context of the trial.
So I'm being reminded that I need to remind people why the trial hasn't started yet. Well, the trial is not going to start without the lieutenant governor and all the senators being in that room. I texted Jason Wheeler just a minute ago to find out if he's got any intel on exactly what's going on. We just know at this point. I've got up on my computer, I'm looking at the live feed coming from the Senate chambers, and we see people standing around, but we do not see Dan Patrick. I'm looking off, and there's a live feed. You can see Rusty Hardin. You can see Andrew Murr. He's the guy with the handlebar mustache with the lady behind the white jacket. But for some reason, we just don't have Dan Patrick yet. I don't know the why on that. I mean, and which is kind of surprising, just because Dan Patrick has been, pretty prompt. So there must be a good reason. So I've more questions from the chat, and I love answering questions from folks. Somebody asked, can we have a mistrial because of mistakes made by Dan Patrick? Todd?
Sorry, I was reading an email. Say that one more time.
Can we have a mistrial because of Dan Patrick's mistakes?
No, he hasn't done anything that.
I know. I don't believe. I mean, I'm letting you answer it, but go ahead.
No, there hasn't been anything that's been done by Patrick up to this point that warrants a mistrial at all. To have a mistrial, somebody's got to really step outside the bounds, so to speak. And
I don't think you could really have a mistrial on this.
Well,
I don't think it's possible. I mean, I think this is ultimately not. It has the quasi trappings of a criminal trial.
It's a quasi criminal trial.
It's a quasi, right? So it's not. You're not going to have an appeals court.
No.
You're not going to have. It's just a different. It's a different animal.
It is. It's its own thing.
It's its own thing.
Keep in mind, they're going by the rules, and nowhere in the rules was there allowed a mistrial. You hear the evidence, you put forth the motions, hear the evidence, and then you closing remarks, and then you go in and vote.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there's not going to be a quote unquote mistrial. So Missy is asking Todd, so where's the evidence that Paxton committed a crime? All we've seen is people whining about procedure. What do you say to that?
All we see is people whining about procedure?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand that.
I mean, basically they're saying there's no evidence.
I mean, the testimony of all these people that have gotten on the witness stand is pretty strong evidence to me. Again, testimony from the witness stand is evidence. I'll give you an example in a different context. In a completely different context, so maybe this can kind of relate to what we're seeing in this trial. Most people don't understand that in sexual abuse trials, the only evidence usually is going to be the spoken word of the victim. Because most sexual abuse cases, the outcry happens weeks, months, years after the incident, which means there's no physical evidence, there's no witnesses, there's no DNA, there's no medical reports, there's nothing except for the person getting on the stand and saying, this person touched me in a way that was inappropriate or the way I didn't want to be touched. And there are plenty of people that get rightfully convicted and sentenced just based upon the spoken word of the victim. I know that's a very different situation than what we have here. That just illustrates how verbal testimony from the witness stand is enough to convict, if you are to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt.
So someone's asking, Molly Graves asks, anyone think intimidating some of the witnesses and jurors is happening?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is different than a typical trial, guys.
I understand, but if you look at what Busby has been doing, And as you mentioned, that's the style that's allowed in
Well, plus
trials.
you have
or
all these
whatever.
emails going out, and Empower Texans and others. I mean, of course there's politics.
No.
Well, and yeah, but that's if you're listening to all of that. But of course, and we mentioned earlier about the pressure that we're thinking is being put on the senators.
For sure.
Absolutely, there's intimidation.
They're worried about their career as well. I mean, it's been no secret that there have been all kinds of threats made by some of these grassroots groups to say, if you don't vote to dismiss all this or vote to acquit him, then we're gonna find candidates to come after you. And that, I mean, as much as they say that won't impact them, that has to be in the recesses of their mind. I mean, that feels like direct tampering with the jurors' thought process. I mean, that's got to be tough for anybody to deal with.
Well, and I'm sure they're following the polls.
Sure.
And
Which
not
way the
only-
wind is blowing.
Not only following the polls, they're administering their own polls.
Right. So somebody's asking, is Texas paying the $3.3 million? Well, we're that okay, so let me make sure I explain the $3.3 million. So some of the folks that reported Ken Paxton to law enforcement, some of them sued under the Whistleblower Act, and they that lawsuit's been going on for a couple of years. Well, in earlier this year, they came to a $3.3 million settlement, and the legislature has given the amount. I forget what amount you have to go above, but there's above a certain amount. I want to say it's a couple $100,000, or maybe it's $50,000. I forget. Once it gets above a certain amount, the legislature has to approve it. So that went to the legislature for approval. The legislature did not approve that settlement. They did not approve that settlement. And in fact, I remember talking to someone who was involved, one of the attorneys involved in the whistleblower case, and I remember telling him earlier this year, I don't see him approving that settlement. Now, what I didn't see was this coming. I just didn't think they'd approve the settlement. I thought they'd look at it and say, oh, heck no, we're not approving that. But I just didn't realize it was going to trigger, this snowball effect. And you cannot emphasize enough, this is not being led by Democrats. This is being led by Republicans. So what you have is Todd, you have a battle in the Republican Party, right?
Well, that's the other irony of all this is the constant drumbeat by Paxton and his team that this is a political witch hunt. It's a partisan issue. I mean, yes, everything from every step of the way has been led by conservative Republicans. So I'm not really following or understanding the message there. So it seems kind of
well, and to add, keep in mind that when he went before the House, they started investigating as to why we should pay this $3.3 million, and that's when they came up with all this evidence,
right?
And decided to.
Well, some people don't think there's any evidence.
I know.
Well,
I
guess that's for the senators to figure out.
Well, we'll have to see what they say. And then somebody asked, what law did Ken Paxton break? Well, certainly. Well, first of all, to remove, you don't have to prove he broke a law.
That's correct.
I was pulling up the articles of impeachment. I'll have to go back and look. There's one of them out of the 16. There's a couple of them that are kind of catch-alls that have to do with basically fitness for office. And so you don't necessarily have to prove that he broke a law, but most certainly Penley and Maxwell and the rest of them believed that by pursuing this course of investigation, the hiring of Brandon Kammack, they believed that was engaging in obstruction of justice and interfering in a federal prosecution. I mean, that's why they did what they did. I mean, one of them might have been, I forget which one it was, might have been Vassar, could have been Banger. One of them said they believed that had they continued down this course, if they had not spoken up, they believed they could be treated as co-conspirators. They thought, we have got to act, because if we don't do something, and the feeling was, where's it going to end? Where's it going to stop?
Right.
And so that was what was going through their minds. And Paxton's people have not given a legitimate reason why all these people would decide to blow up their careers like this. And so, okay, guys, we're still. I'm looking at the Senate feed. We still don't see Dan Patrick. We're still waiting. Let me see if Jason Wheeler is my colleague that's down in Austin. Let's see if he's responded. Okay, so yeah, he texted back. I asked him why they haven't started, and he says, no idea. He says that it was pushed back to 9:15. Of course, we didn't start at 9:15. It's not clear why, and here we are still waiting at 9:41. Obviously, he sent me that text 4 minutes ago, and we're still waiting at 9:45. I don't know. I mean, I can't put my finger on the exact why we're still waiting. It could just be that they're waiting on a senator. It could be that Dan Patrick got stuck in traffic. I mean, who knows? I don't know. It's really hard to say. Okay. Oh, you want to do the Nate Paul story? Okay. Jay wants to give us a little breather. So,
I like that idea.
You like that idea, Todd?
Yeah,
okay,
that'd be good.
well, because this is. I mean, I can talk a lot, but this
I
is even
can
starting
too.
to get. This is even kind of starting to wear on me. Okay, so we're going to play a story that explains Nate Paul and what we know about Nate Paul. So let's take a listen.
In July of 2017, Forbes published this article, the story of a Texas tycoon building an empire at 30 years old. The journalist who wrote it called Nate Paul a real estate prodigy. Fast forward about 6 years to June of 2023, a very different headline.
A donor accused of bribing Paxton sits in jail tonight, arrested on an FBI warrant. His name is Nate Paul.
Paul was arrested and charged with 8 felony counts of making false financial reports. To sum it up, this 23-page indictment claims Paul gave reports of having a lot more and owing a lot less money than he actually did when applying for loans from credit unions and mortgage lenders to help fund his real estate investments. In one instance, the indictment accuses Paul of providing documents, quote, reflecting an account value of more than $14 million for an account with a, quote, value of less than $13,000. The government wants him to pay $172 million, the amount of the loans he obtained while allegedly providing false documents. Nate Paul's day in court over these accusations will come. But Ken Paxton's impeachment trial was built on a different but related accusation.
In August of 2019, a search warrant is executed. A criminal search warrant is executed by DPS and the FBI on property belonging to Nate Paul.
This is video from a hearing held by the Texas House Committee that investigated and charged Ken Paxton with impeachment articles, accusing him of interfering with the FBI's investigation of Nate Paul. And this is video of part of a nearly 4,000-page pile of evidence released by that committee, showing Paul is in a meeting with his attorney and one of Paxton's top officials at the time, trying to get information and even pushing back on that investigation.
They sliced all the Wi-Fi lines. They destroyed my camera system. So that happened at all 3 locations.
In it, you can hear David Maxwell, who was the director of criminal law enforcement for the AG's office, standing firm.
Most stuff you're complaining about is certainly within the law.
And then this exchange between Maxwell and Nate Paul's attorney.
I don't think that our raising these kinds of questions, talking to you, talking to Ken, whoever, is any way of obstruction. We're just trying to figure out what happened.
I understand, but they're going to think that that's what we're doing, trying to obstruct a federal investigation.
Now, when Paul was arrested, his attorney released this statement to WFAA, saying his charges have nothing to do with Ken Paxton, nothing whatsoever, and called the impeachment effort weak. But former prosecutor turned UNT Dallas law professor Angela Downs says the prosecutors in the impeachment trial will focus on shutting that down.
The prosecutors on this case will be able to make those connections.
Back in 2018, Paul contributed $25,000 to Paxton's campaign. They were connected, but that's not unusual. But Paxton is accused of misusing his position as Attorney General to do favors for Nate Paul and his business in exchange for favors of his own. In addition to accusations that he used his office to help Paul get info on his own federal investigation, the articles also claim Paul hired a woman Ken Paxton was having an affair with, and in exchange for his legal help, Nate Paul hooked Paxton up with some home renovations.
Nate Paul admitted that she worked for one of his companies. However, he did not know how much she was paid and could not identify a single specific project that she worked on.
The evidence released by the impeachment committee actually includes this employment contract, showing that the woman worked for Paul. There are also records from Uber showing fake accounts allegedly created by Paxton using the service to visit Nate Paul and his alleged mistress.
This is almost uncharted territory. To have someone who his name, Mr. Paul's name, being part of the conversation, being connected to so many particulars of the case, really puts you on notice.
And many legal experts believe that Paul's current legal issues could prime him to switch his stance.
He's really in a position where he's got to start thinking about his defense and how he can protect himself. And so this might put him in a very vulnerable position where he might be willing to, to speak against the Attorney General.
And as for Nate Paul's own legal woes, trial is set for July of 2024, an undoubtedly much different story than the one told back in July of 2017. In North Texas, I'm Morgan Young.
Okay, so we're back with a live feed of the Texas Senate, and we do not see Texas senators in their chairs. It is 9:50. We see some of the House impeachment managers over there. Okay, are they going to pull out a little bit? Yeah. I mean, we see members of the media up in the gallery. It's interesting to me that a lot of us thought that this was going to be, it was going to be a packed gallery, and it really hasn't been, which is kind of surprising and interesting. But we still don't have an explanation for what the delay is. I mean, it could just be an innocent explanation for all I know. Again, because you have to have all 31 senators in the room. It could just be as simple as someone's running late. I don't know. We don't know if it really relates to the trial itself. Just have no idea. And so while we continue the tap dance, as we wait for this to start, Jay has queued up a story about Angela Paxton. Angela Paxton, of course, is Ken Paxton's wife, and she is a sitting state senator, and because of her role, she has to be there in the Senate chambers when the proceedings are underway, although she cannot vote because clearly it would be a conflict of interest for her to vote. So let's take a listen to that story.
Good evening. Ken Paxton's campaign still has this video posted on its YouTube channel from 7 years ago.
Well, I am Angela Paxton, as my last name might kind of give away. I am married to our Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton.
Before winning election to the Texas Senate, Angela Paxton sometimes campaigned with her husband and sang.
I'm a pistol packing mama, and my husband Sue's Obama. I'm a pistol packing mama, yes I am.
Angela and Ken met at Baylor University. They married in 1986 and had 4 children. Through the years, they've shared several family photos on social media. She was a career educator, a teacher, and then a guidance counselor. 16 years after her husband entered politics, she did too.
Angela Paxton is an educator with 22 years of experience helping kids reach their dreams.
In 2018, Angela Paxton ran for the same state Senate seat Ken Paxton once held. She won, and won again in 2022. As a senator, she's also now a juror in her husband's impeachment trial. But she is a juror without a vote.
The motion is adopted.
The Texas Senate approved 31 rules to govern the upcoming trial, and rule number 31 applies solely to Angela Paxton. It says spouses have a conflict of interest. It allows her to hear all of the evidence, but that's all she can do. When senators deliberate behind closed doors, she will not listen in or weigh in. Her presence counts towards the total number of votes needed to convict her husband, but she will not cast a vote on anything. Senator Paxton voted against those rules. Then she put out a statement saying she will do everything in her power to be a voice for the people of her district. Never before has a Texas Attorney General been impeached. And never before.
I'm a pistol packing mama, yes I
has a senator sat in on her husband's impeachment trial. In Dallas, I'm Teresa Woodard.
Whew, I sing in the shower, but never in public. Whoa. Todd, how well do you know Angela Paxton?
I don't know Angela at all, just by name, and certainly she's my state senator. I live in Plano. She's my senator in my district. My mom knows her extremely well. I think she has a lot of respect for her. I think that she likes her, I think, personally and professionally, but I don't know her myself.
We got to put Todd's mic on. This is what happens. We all. Is it not? It's not on.
There we go. How about
is
now?
Does he? No.
Is that better now?
Do we have a mic working here now? Do we have all the levels?
Is it okay now? We'll figure it out. Oh, you know what? I might want to plug it in too. Sorry about that. I think it's down below my foot.
Well, you know, these are the vagaries of live streaming here. We've got Ryan. We don't have Ryan on camera, but we have Ryan coming up to help Todd figure out our mic situation. We all took a break while we were waiting here, and we've got a live feed of the Senate chambers up again. We do not see the senators in that room. Yeah, some folks are commenting on our guys. I'm sorry. This is the live feed. This is part of the fun of the interesting thing of doing this is that, you know, it's not always going to be perfect. This is not a perfectly produced TV show. A part of this is, you know, sometimes things are a little wonky, and so we just kind of
roll with it
through it. We roll with it. That's what we do.
That's right.
But for people that have joined us, because earlier when we were talking about your mom, we had a lot fewer people watching. So for the more than 4,000 people that are currently watching, and we're continuing to build as we wait for this to start. Talk again about your mom and explain who your mom is,
Sure.
Todd, for the whole lot more people that are watching.
Right.
Now.
So my mom is Florence Shapiro. She was the former mayor of Plano for a number of years when I was growing up, and also became the Texas state senator from our area in Collin County, Plano, surrounding counties, what's now Senate District 8, for 20 years. And when she retired from the Texas Senate in 2012, she was elected in 1992. When she retired in 2012, Ken Paxton was elected to that seat, and then when he moved on to Attorney General, his wife now, Angela, serves in that same role. So she is in the line of succession in the Texas State Senate in front of the Paxtons.
How has the political landscape changed since your mom? I mean, how would you describe your mom in terms of her Republican leanings?
I mean, I think that she's certainly got incredible conservative credentials, and I don't think anybody ever questions her loyalty to the Republican Party. She was a big part of the conservative movement in Collin County and throughout the state of Texas, very closely aligned with Governor Bush and that era of Texas politics. Karl Rove, still very close with a lot of those folks. So I think the party's changed since then. I think there's a lot of new faces and new ideals. I think she would probably tell you the same thing, but it's a different time and a different place, that's for sure.
It is a different time and a different place. Somebody's asking, is Nate Paul out on bail?
Yes, he's not in custody.
I didn't think so.
I don't believe he's in custody.
Yeah, I don't think he is. And your mom, she was pretty involved in mainly educational issues, right?
Lots of educational issues, correct.
Like, what were some of her signature?
Well, one of the things she's probably most known for are what's called Ashley's Laws. There was a young girl that was abducted from a park in Plano right when she was elected, not long after she was elected to the Senate, named Ashley Estelle, and that changed sex offender laws in the state of Texas. And so that was a very, very big part of her time in the Senate, passing the Ashley's Laws and how we deal with sex offenders in our state. So she's very proud of that.
So I'm continuing to keep an eye on the live feed coming out of the Texas Senate, and we still do not see Dan Patrick. It's 10 o'clock, so it's just really unusual because Dan Patrick has pretty much consistently been starting on time. I don't know, Bernadine.
So. And I'm wondering, and this is merely a wonder, if it has something to do with the trial, other than senators not being available.
Hey folks, you're asking me to post the Nate Paul video links. What I've posted several times is the link to the Texas State Senate impeachment site. And if you take that link and you go down to the House Board of Managers exhibits, you can see volume 1 of 3. If you look at volume 1 of 3, I'm going to post it in the chat again. If you look at volume 1 of 3, exhibits 2 and 3. Actually, I just posted the link to that, actually. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize I could just post that PDF. But there's that PDF. If you take that, that link will take you to, look, it's just going to pull up that PDF. Exhibits 2 and 3 are the Nate Paul interviews. And then they also have, if you look in that, the exhibit list, you can see there's all kinds of other things that are in here. You know, interview transcripts. There's a ton of stuff in these exhibits, but within that is these Nate Paul interviews. And so I personally thought listening to them was very instructive, because you get, you know, and that's why I think it would be important for state senators to listen to this, because this is what they're basing the whole decision to hire Brandon Kamek is the claims that Nate Paul is making, which frankly didn't make any sense. I was expecting when I listened to these, I was expecting when I listened to those recordings, I thought, well, maybe I'll hear something that will explain the reason why on this. And in fact, it was really hard, because the day that these particular interviews came down, I was trying to find some like sound bites that made sense. Sound bites, and that was really hard. Right. Because I was trying to find those cogent sound bites, and he was all over the map. And he gave no coherent explanation for why his proof that they had doctored this search warrant affidavit. And I mean, again, it's not to say that you can't have misconduct on the part of law enforcement. You can. I've covered it. I believe it can happen. But the level of misconduct that would have had to take in place here would have had to involve a conspiracy. Conspiracies, Todd, they don't typically work when you have a whole lot of people, right?
No, it's pretty hard to pull it off in a way, in concert with, a whole host of agencies and people and parties and everybody rowing the boat in the same direction. That would be pretty difficult to do. I mean, and again, for what reason? What's the end game? What's the goal? For all these people to do such and risk their careers and their lives and their families and their good name and what are they, why? For what reason?
Doesn't make sense.
No.
There are no sensible explanations for why law enforcement, because there's no sensible explanations for why law enforcement, why they would do this, and why all these people would be willing to conspire against Nate Paul, why a magistrate judge, a bankruptcy judge, a clerk with the magistrate judge's office, federal prosecutors, people with the state Securities Board, FBI agents, U.S. attorney. Am I missing anybody?
No, but
I'm just. I mean, it's a lot.
I know, and
I'm just like. Can you imagine the level of cooperation man, cooperation you'd have to have.
If we're looking at it that way, it raises the question as to why Ken Paxton would attempt to help Nate Paul to why he would just help.
Why would he risk his career unless he just thought he could get away with it?
Well, he's gotten away with a lot now.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I keep posting this link in the chat, and people keep saying I'm gonna ask Jay to post it. I think it's Jay. Jay, can you post this PDF link? Because apparently, I'm gonna email it to you right now. Okay, so this link that I'm gonna have Jay post is a PDF that has a whole bunch of exhibits in it. I mean, it's a big, big document. Within that document, exhibits 2 and 3 are the Nate Paul videos. And you need to make sure you have some time on your hands, but don't leave this feed to go watch them yet, because I forget how long the first one is, but there is they're quite lengthy, and they are but they are worth watching, I think, if you want to understand kind of why David Maxwell and Mark Penley and Banger and all these people weren't putting much stock in anything that Nate Paul was saying. I mean, it's pretty instructive. So somebody emailed me and wants to know, what if Paxton resigns? This isn't a criminal trial and crimes don't have to be proven. I think even if he was to resign, this still continues.
Well,
I don't think it stops.
That's what we've been told, that even if he resigns, the trial will continue to the end.
Yeah, I don't see this. First of all, I don't see Ken Paxton resigning. That would not be in keeping with what I know of him, right? I mean, come on, you're more political. I'm not political.
Very, very surprised, because keep in mind, until this impeachment trial, the whole episode, if you look at from 2015, when he was first indicted, he has not been held accountable. This is the first time, so there's no indication at all that he's going to look at what's best for anyone else but Ken Paxton. And at this point, he's going to write it out and hope that not hope, but he probably figures that all of the senators, at least 21 of them, will not indict him and will not convict him.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't see him resigning. That would be just very much out of character for Ken Paxton, based on what I have seen since I became more familiar with him back in 2015. So somebody's asking, says, my husband wants to know why Dan Patrick did not have to recuse himself in light of taking a $1 million contribution and a $2 million loan from a Ken Paxton PAC. I'd have to go look that up. I do know there was definitely money given. I mean, this is, again, it's inherently a political process.
Well, and then he said that he could rule fairly.
Yeah.
So who's going to say, oh, no, you can't, and he's the lieutenant governor.
And I think overall he's done a decent job.
Governor.
I mean,
but if you ask that question, you have to ask, why is Brian Hughes still there? He's implicated. You have to, he's the lieutenant governor.
And to explain, he's implicated because Brian Hughes, when they needed, so in order to do the foreclosure opinion under the state, it's either the law or the Constitution, I forget which one, you have to have, I think it's state law, you have to have certain types of, only certain parties can ask for opinions. And one of the types is a chairperson of a legislative committee. Oh, Patrick's up. Ooh, thank you.
Oh, good.
All right, well, let's...
Now, when we come back, finish that explanation, because